DC, there's a number of laws and regulations that really favor the tenants, and that's one of the reasons property management is so valuable in DC, because having an experienced manager really makes the process much easier. A lot of owners just don't know where to go to get the forms, or even if the forms exist or what laws exist. So really, there's a huge benefit of having property management in DC, as long as that property manager is truly experienced with the laws, regulations. And I believe it really goes above and beyond just collecting rent and making repairs, which is obviously very important. But knowing this side of the business also is a big help. So just page by page, this form, which comes from DC itself, and we'll just take you through this and kind of go over some of the highlighted terms. The first page is very basic. It just states the tenant's name and address. This is something we fill out for the owner. Just a brief history on this form. The 90-day notice is served to the tenants either 90 days prior to the lease contract date ending, so it has to be served on the first of the month, and then you count 90 days backwards from the lease expiration date, or it can be served at any point during the holdover period, which is just the month-to-month period in DC. One of the big items in this is on the first page right here. It says basically, after you move back into the property as a property owner, you cannot re-rent the property for 12 months. Reason being is that DC feels that if you moved back in, then went ahead and re-rented it the next day, you're trying in a way to constructively evict the past tenant. Either you weren't happy with the tenancy or whatever the reason may be, but DC is saying, no, you cannot do that. You do actually have to live in the property. Whether you choose to sell the property at some point down the line, in this particular document doesn't state anything negating that. However, on the leasing side of it, you would basically have to wait those 12 months to release. So that's just something to keep in mind as you're serving this form, and what I tell all my owners or prospective owners. This last line is just the date that the tenant has to move out by. That is a set in stone date. So if they are not out by that date, eviction does get filed. I've never had that. Typically, with 90 days, that's plenty of time for a tenant to find something. In fact, a lot of the times when I serve this, I help the tenants find something, and we just try to make that a smooth transition, and they appreciate that. And that's just something that we offer as a service here to our tenants. Going to page 2, basically this goes over some of the laws and regulations that DC places, and basically is stating if you fail to vacate, this will go to court as an eviction. I don't think any tenant really wants to get to that point, especially when you have 90 days to do this. One thing to note with a tenancy is that once you get served this notice as a tenant, you do get, at any point during that 90 days, the ability to move out. So you can move out 5 days later and only be responsible up to that 5th day. So you can choose to stay the full 90 days, or you can move out at any point. One other thing on this page that's very important is this registration number. Every owner has to have a business license, which also gets a registration number. And that number needs to be placed in here. It's also typically placed on the lease, and any other forms like TOPA that'll come in later videos. So again, placing this number in here is something we do for the housing provider, the landlord. And you can either act as the owner or the agent as the housing provider. I typically put the owner. I just feel at the end of the day, it's not my property, and I really just rather have the owner here and here, because that's really who's taking the property back. I'm not taking it back as the management company. So going to page 3, this just states that the owner is having this form signed and notarized. That's a big deal. That's one of the reasons that the forms have to be original and they have to be mailed back. So typically we allow about 180 days from the point that you're going to do this, only because a lot of our owners are overseas or out of the state, and we just have to allow time for mailings, allow time to get them notarized. I have property owners that are in countries that can take 10 to 15 days just to get a piece of mail. So it's important that we allow enough time and really time this perfectly. So typically about 6 months before the owner really wants to move back in is when we start this process, and I typically send them the paperwork out immediately. They can choose when to do it and just send it back to me. Once the paperwork is back to me, we do 2 things with it. We basically send a copy via email to the tenant just so I know they got it, and we also send the copy to the tenant via certified mail. And DC really likes things certified, so that's the way they want it. Just to make sure they get it, I do it via email as well. And then along with that, we send the copy down to DC. Really, it just gets filed with them. They don't do anything with it. And the tenant doesn't have to do anything with the form either. It's just saying that they received it. Years and years ago, we would post this and physically take it to the property, put it on the door. We've done away with that just from technology, and certified mail I think is more than sufficient. And with an email backup is more than sufficient for me as well. I've never had any issues with that. There's nothing stopping you from hand delivering it. It actually is one of the options here to hand deliver it. So in occasion we may do that. And this form actually here is for the agent. You can say by personal service, by substitute service, whichever way works best. Typically I check the certified mail with delivery confirmation, and that's more than satisfactory for DC. That's really it about the 90-day notice. Like I said, it's a very standard document. It's a very straightforward way of taking your property back in DC. So I hope you got some information from this, and further videos to come. We're going to be talking about TOPA, the 3 different steps of TOPA, A, B, and C, and we're also going to be getting into a little bit more of the process of renting out property and what that involves. So stay tuned, and thank you for watching.